I'm Daksh Goel and I'm founder of OSA Studio. It's a small design studio based in Delhi. And we also got our first office about a year and a half ago. Um, but yeah, I mean, from childhood, I was very interested in design or art, or rather, not design. I did not know it was design back then. But in 10th, I think I was in ninth or 10th grade. I started taking art classes and then I went on to do a diploma from Delhi College of Art. And I was quite young then. So I knew that I wanted to do something related to the creative field, though I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And the sad part of the education system is that you don't really get to experience any sort of
Yeah.
creativity within the school premises other than just like random 1 week art class, right? It doesn't really teach you
Right.
that, oh, if there should be architecture, it should be UI. And I mean, it's too asking too much
Oh,
from them, but there's no idea of what actually the creative field is. And I thought that architecture might be the best of both worlds, where I can take care of like all the engineering or the science part of it as well, because that is what you think back then, right? And also the art part. So I was quite adamant of joining architecture because of that. And so I did, even though like my family doesn't have an architecture background. So at that time, I did not know, okay, it like, it's run on a family business. There is nepotism and stuff like that. I had no clue. I was just a kid trying to make through. So
yeah.
I just entered the field thinking that that would be the best choice. And I prepared for JE and not did quite well there. So I had an option between SPA and CEPT, and I just thought that, okay, maybe leaving Delhi might be a good option for me. So I decided to go to CEPT, and the world that I saw there was like completely different, right? Because I was not expecting
Mm.
the kind of reception that I would have, because all my cousins have, or my brother even has gone to engineering. So I was not really like ready for what was to come. But yeah, nevertheless, it was quite an experience, actually, I would say. But I would say that in the first 3 or 4 years, actually, I was kind of not happy with architecture. Not just by the way it was taught, but everything about it. Like I couldn't understand juries, I couldn't understand grading systems on something that's subjective. All these things just couldn't add up to me. Like I stopped looking at my grades I was probably the only person who stopped looking at his grades after the first year, because I was like, it doesn't make sense. How are you grading me on something that's subjective? So
Yeah.
um, it just things didn't make sense to me. So I stopped really caring about it before COVID hit. I was quite adamant that I would might change my field per se. But then COVID hit, and then I started doing a lot of graphic designing, moving into different sectors of seeing where I can go from architecture. But then I
Okay.
also got an opportunity to present some of my work in World Architecture Festival. I was doing an internship with the firm, and I got to travel there, and it just sort of changed everything that I thought about architecture, because I had not really traveled a lot before that. And going to Barcelona, going to Madrid, Spain, I realized that there is a lot of power with architecture,
Yeah.
especially with Gaudi's work. And yeah, then I thought that maybe I should give it a try. And then since then, I've just been mostly doing architecture, right? If that makes sense.
Awesome. So what I got is that your early inspirations, like to like finally give in to architecture, is traveling and seeing like what great architects have created by that art or skill, whatever you call it.
Yeah, I mean, even today, like if I talk to a newcomer, I always say that I have almost never had architectural references to things. Like even when I design, I have zero. I've never looked at anything from Pinterest. I've never looked at
Yeah.
anything from architecture magazines. I just don't like seeing them, because to me, that's the whole point. If you want to bring something new to the table, you have to be true to just design and not architecture per se. You have
Yeah.
examples like, I mean, they're not very good examples, but if you look at, let's say, London, you look at people like Heatherwick, who are not even architects. I mean, even the Pritzker Prize winner, the founder of our college, P.V. Doshi, technically never completed architecture. So there is
Right.
something to be said that, the education system alone cannot teach you architecture. It's just you imbibing the spaces around you, if that makes sense. Sometimes a
Yeah.
fashion
Yeah.
designer or a
Exactly.
textile designer can probably design a space way better than you. And
Yeah.
and we see this going. I mean, right now, if you see the new LV show, Louis Vuitton show, the ground of that was designed by Bijoy Jain, who is an architect,
Hmm.
and collaborating with a fashion designer to create something for a fashion ramp walk. It's just
Yeah.
not a natural transition, right? But it somehow seamlessly blends, because as architects, we often think that we can only design buildings, but that's not true. We design everything. And so is any other designer. A graphic designer can also, because they live in space every day. You live in your house, you live in your streets, you live in an urban environment. If you just imbibe that and start doing something and playing with it, you can kind of come up with new solutions. And so my inspirations would mostly be the spaces that I've grew up in, the people that I've grown up with,
Yeah,
and who have nothing to do with architecture per se, And that is what it brings something new to it, I guess.
that's very interesting. Okay. So, architectural education. You went to CEPT. I'm a SPA grad. I don't know if you know that, but these are like the two
Yeah.
never-ending debate colleges. कि अरे CEPT is better, no RSPA is better. In my personal opinion, I think you guys have an edge because of your infrastructure and your dedication to your degree. Because our college seems like a government office at times.
Actually, you know what? Like,
Because
we've had this conversation from a lot because I mean, this is a never-ending conversation. But
yeah,
actually, keeping all of that aside, I think that has actually nothing to do with architecture and else. That's what I'm saying. Like the building itself. I mean, sure, in some metaphysical way, you live in a building and you imbibe the things that you're living in every single day, and
yeah,
there's an experience that happens with the double volume spaces. I mean, it's just B.V. Doshi's creation, right? You can't really match any like
yeah,
nowhere in the country you can match an experience like that. It's one-off
yeah.
experience. So I understand that there is that to it as well. But more than that, I think is the idea of letting go of what you have, right? So for me, why I didn't choose SPA was also because staying in Delhi meant being in a comfort zone, right? Whereas if
Yeah,
you go to Ahmedabad, you know that there are certain number of seats because there is a reservation system in India, right? So there will be
yeah,
a large chunk of 70% or 60% of the people that would be from, let's say, Gujarat, right? Now, looking at that, you'll have to learn a new language. You'll have to learn how to tackle with new people. All those things also teach you a lot about life, and that makes you a well designer. That's what I'm saying. It's not
mhm,
just about designing, but all these small things makes you get out of the comfort zone. And
yeah,
I think a large part of architecture is getting out of that comfort zone. If you always design behind the computer in one single zone, I don't think you can be an architect, which is why B.B. Doshi was so well, because it was not because of the college itself or that he was doing around our age, but he was already working with somebody like Corbusier, right? So
mhm,
learning under
yeah,
him and going to places, going to Paris, going to France, to learn under people like that changed something within him, right? Because it put him out
yeah.
of the comfort zone. It put him outside a zone of Gujarati environment into a French environment.
Global
And
stage,
I'm
yeah.
yeah, and that probably would have changed a lot of things. Okay, I need to act differently. I need to learn certain things of the language, and that changes, I think, a lot. I think what SP really lacks is more than the infrastructure itself. I mean, because Delhi cannot really have a lot of infrastructure, but it's that idea of going out of the comfort zone. If I
Yeah.
may add to that, but yeah, that would be my main learning from SEP because it took me a long, long while to get used to it. But yeah, looking back, I would give up anything to go back to that space. I mean, and at
So,
that time, I did not really like that space. But because it's just that like so many people were in the vicinity, right? Like David
yeah,
Doshi himself, he used to come to Kanora Art Center almost every other week, and it would become so used to us for us to like sit with him and talk with him that the sometimes you just forget that how important those
yeah,
conversations were, right? And now looking back, those are probably the most important conversations I had during college,
yeah.
and that has probably shaped me more as an architect than any architectural book. So yeah, that would be my take on that, I guess.
Yeah, I think that the point that you mentioned, that sitting with such great minds, exploring the spaces that they've created, that is what we lacked a lot in SPA Delhi. Like it was like a conventional degree. You go, you get your grades, you get back. There is like the creative exploration of it is a lot less. That is what my perception was. You just like confirmed it.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
it's very true. Yeah.
so moving forward from CEPT, now you're pursuing masters in product design. So why the switch? Could you just walk us through that?
I think a lot of people, I mean, it's a side part also in India, but when we say product design, a lot of people often think UI UX and
Ah,
like computer based product design, but that's not what I'm doing at all. Actually, which is why we call the field design products and not product design. I know it's a jargon, but because we're actually designing physical products. So it's all about creating something in front of you and not something just digitally. And that is what something that I wanted to do. And going back on the same idea, right? I never understood why they grade. The best thing about RCA, which it is a very good college, of course, it's ranked number one in the world for design. But more than that, when I looked at all the colleges, different colleges for where I would want to be at, it's a place that doesn't grade you. It's a college that only gives you pass and fail. It gives you no GPA, it gives you no CGPA, nothing. So, and it's an only master's degree, right? It doesn't have undergraduate programs. So it is made for an environment where it opens conversations and it is not levied down by, how much grade did you get? 4.0, 3.8, what master's degree would you do? What PhD would you do? It's not about that. Life is, when you are thinking about designers, yes, in 20s, it would matter a lot for a lot of people. But soon you'll realize after you pass this stage, maybe in the 30s, that it doesn't really make a difference if you have 3.8 GPA or three. Like, who's asking Doshi if he got like 4 GPA or he didn't even complete college? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And it's a bizarre thing that Indian education system still works like that. So I wanted to go to a college that is sort of away from that and is just open to conversations, whether it be art related, design related. And also another thing is that because primarily it's an art college, there are so many artists who have completely different perspectives on how to design spaces, right? You look at a good example would be this. I don't know if you've heard about him. There was a Louis Vuitton creative called Virgil Abloh. He did Off-White and very, very popular fashion designer. And he was once talking about a candle, right? And he was saying that this is a broken candle. Like it's a it looks like a piece of garbage. But as soon as you put it into a pristine white gallery with white walls and, you place this in center and this becomes the greatest artwork ever. Yeah. And so either you can design the object itself or you can design the space around the object itself. Right. So, and the space around the object is architecture. Right. And the object itself is product. So it's like, I am trying to encompass everything that is there in this space, like the product itself and the space around it. So that was my idea behind doing product design, was something like that, if that makes sense.
So, like getting into, I think RCA is not an easy task. Like, what is the procedure? Like, how do you get in?
To be very honest, like it's kind of absurd, right? Because I was not planning to do a master's degree, especially this late. Kind of late in my life. It's not very late, but I was not expecting to do it because my studio is still running and I've been on doing projects and I have a team back in Delhi. So I knew that it would be tough to manage both the things together. So I think last year, February, I just applied to a few colleges, but with RCA, the same thing, right? I'm an artist at heart. So I did not want to apply with the same ideology or writing this SOP, writing these many words. Yeah. I am not with that jargon. I don't know if it works with other colleges, if it works for you or not, but I just wanted to be as true to myself and explore how much I can do, like in everything that I'm given, right? So the SOP that we had to write for RCA, it was only 300 words, which was very less. And I was like, how am I going to write and describe whatever I've done in 300 words? So I ended up writing a poem. So I wrote a poem for RCA as an SOP, and they reverted back like literally in 2 days. I got admission in 2 days because probably they had never seen an application like that. The official application was instead of like a wording thing of like people are looking at grammar and like how to get it sorted. I've written a poem as my submission, right? So it probably must have been like, okay, who is this person? Let's talk to him. Let's get him on a call and let's see what he does.
What was the premise of the poem? Like, what was the concept?
It was just my life. It was literally just my life. It was about like, I started like as an artist, my journey as an artist, traveling all around the world, backpacking. And in the middle, I have backpacked a lot. Like I've backpacked through Sri Lanka, I've backpacked through Europe, through USA, so India. So all these places. So it was like just encompassing a journey through traveling and learning as a poem, if that makes sense. So it was a very basic poem, but like it was just something that I wanted to do because I was
got you in. Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess that worked.
Yeah. So we'll stay on the topic of RCA. Yeah. Can you just like give us a day-to-day or like just a gist of what is it like?
I mean, it's an interesting question, right? Because to me, even failing is not really failing because I don't think you fail a lot in RCA because I mean, if you've come into RCA, the the which is what my thing with SP and CEPT is. Like, why grade students? You've
Yeah.
got the best students in the country anyway. Like, all you can do by grade is put their morale down. Like, if I'm getting into CEPT or SPA, all my grading system has already been done. Like, to get there, I have to beat like 5
Yeah.
lakh or 10 lakh students to get into SPA Delhi. So if I am beating all of them, I'm pretty sure you must be in some level quite high in the academic skills, right?
Yeah.
So why check your academic skills again? It doesn't. To me, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But maybe it makes sense to other architects, but to me, it doesn't make sense. With RC, it's like, okay, you might fail, but the only way you can fail is if you don't submit things, right? And
Okay.
they
Fair enough.
wouldn't push you for something, but you yourself would want to push yourself. That's the point. Because if you are doing everything on your own, right? You're researching on your own. So nobody's forcing you that, oh, talk about sustainability. No, if you don't care about sustainability,
Yeah.
don't talk about it. Don't throw that jargon around, right? If you care about, let's say, a specific community, talk about that community. It doesn't make a difference if you're in the UK and you want to talk about somebody in like India. You can. It's completely open. And that open space opens a lot of new conversations that never has been spoken because there are no set
Yeah.
rules for doing one thing, right? Of course, there's a structure to it that there's semester 1, semester 2, semester 3, and particular deliverables. But even they have a lot of flexibility, right? Of what you deliver is depends on you. You can change it according to the conversations you have with the tutors. Day-to-day life is quite actually interesting because again, that's what I'm saying. Like, being out of the comfort zone is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in India haven't really been outside the comfort zone. It's quite sad to say it, but like here in London, you have to do everything on your own, which is completely
Yeah.
normal for people in the West, but not in India. Like, you have to wash your
Yeah.
own dishes, your own clothes, clean your own house, clean your own dishes, cook every day. So a lot of my time goes in all of these daily chores, but I'm really happy because
Yeah.
I can sustain myself quite well without any external help. And that
Mhm.
gives you a lot of confidence. It gives you that you are kind of reaching towards a lot of independency that you always crave for. And
Yeah.
especially being in a year here. So if I've survived here for a year, I think I can survive anywhere. I can fit anywhere, clean anywhere, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's more important than RCA itself. But within RCA, so we have like 3 or 4 classes a week. So we have like quite a loose schedule. It's not very, very tight. It's not every
Yeah.
single day that you have to do something. But the campus is open all the time. So you can go to technical services, get something laser cut, get something here, makeshift something. And the thing is that because it's an art college, you get a lot of opportunities to network and talk to people from other
Yeah.
fields and display your work otherwise, which you do not get as much in architecture. Again, I think a thing that architecture really lacks is displaying of the work that you've already done, because you have only a few sources. Like, maybe there's Architectural Digest, maybe there's really really big places where you can display a work, but not everyday thing. Like, oh, I made
Yeah.
this small architectural invention, can I display this somewhere? No, you wouldn't have a place where you can
Yeah.
display it. But here, because there are a lot of curators, every single project that you do can be displayed somewhere or the other, and you can have a critique on it. And that's quite interesting to me because, yeah, it offers spaces like that. Maybe that's the biggest difference.
Awesome. Sounds like an ideal sort of college that gives you freedom enough to then explore in isolation whatever you're doing. Like, it's part of the creative process. Cool. Okay. So, coming back to the point that you mentioned that you have a team in Delhi as well who is like running things at OSA Studio, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then, so what is that chapter of your life? Can you talk about that?
It's quite interesting, but I think it started off, as I said, like in 2020, I started with a lot of graphic designing. So I started working with companies. I don't know if you know about it. It's called Applause Entertainment. They are a company that do a lot of like OTT platform shows, like Scam
Okay.
1992, popular shows
Awesome. Yeah.
for Sony and Sony Live, etc. etc. So
Yeah.
I started working with them as a graphic designer, and then I also worked with Universal Music. I also worked with a few other places as a graphic designer, and also as an NFT artist. So I was selling mostly just art in 2020 to 2021, and then yeah, I just randomly hit up a company that was looking for a graphic designer. But later on, they said that they are also looking for an interior architect. And I just happened to be there, and I was just like, I'm an architect otherwise. So if you want me to design a store, I can probably give in a few inputs. And yeah, that was my first project. And from there, we started getting a few more projects, and I started thinking maybe I should get into architecture properly and learn a few things, and maybe leave the job and start my own thing. So the studio was always running on the side. We always had collaborations. Um, but we didn't have a proper physical space till like 2 years ago. But after completing my degree and staying at a job for a year, I decided to finally pull the plug and get a few more projects in. So yeah, it's tougher to get. The main issue is to get the projects in, but you have to work really hard for it. But once they're in, it gets a little bit easy because I mean, designing is not the tough part for architects. It's the business part that is usually the tougher part. So yeah, the initial few projects are always tougher to sort of get because they also have a lot of restrictions. But yeah, after that, I got this big project called Furnish and Shade, which is our biggest project, I think. So we work mostly with retail clients. It also helps us to complete the project quite quickly. Like the Furnish and Shade retail shop is, I think, 7,000 square feet, which is quite big for a retail shop. It's like six floors, massive shop in Kirtinagar, and it was completed within like 6 or 7 months from top to bottom because they have to pay rent, they have to do so many things. So yeah.
So did you have like prior experience, or it was just like you just dived in?
No, I did. So why? So as soon as I completed college, at first I thought maybe I shouldn't like, what should I do, if I should do architecture or not? But then I joined an architecture firm for completing my like a year at the year and a half there. So by the time I was leaving that firm, I had already started taking projects on my own. So I was working like 8 hours at the firm and then 4 or 5 hours back at home. It was quite hectic, but yeah, you have to sort of manage that time period.
Yeah, valid. Cool. Okay. So you had your experiences, because my question that was forming in my head was, then what is like the perfect time for somebody to decide I can start on my own, I have enough experience? I'm talking about architecture in this sense. Maybe it applies to other design fields as well.
I think I mean, this is probably one of the most common questions I get asked all the time, right? Because and everybody would give you sort of like a generic answer of, oh, there is no perfect time. You just
that is the answer we get.
That's how you see on LinkedIn a lot. But I don't like that answer as much. And I also don't like the answer that a job is particularly a bad thing to do. You know, you have to find your way of what you prioritize in life. I think what you feel is right for you. And I generally mean that because, for example, if you're a person who's happy with his job and just not happy with the salary that it's getting, because usually a lot of architects are facing that issue primarily, then you should be looking at it, how I can increase my salary, not how I can jump from a job to because that necessarily doesn't mean that your salary would increase, right? There can be significant losses as well when you run a business. I mean, 96% of the business is paid, right? So you also require a lot of collateral in the beginning to, like, you can't just get an office. You cannot just hire people. You would have to pay them. So how do you pay people if you don't have money yourself? It's a tough dilemma to be in. So, but if you are working towards it, then you would be like, okay, now I need to sort my financials. Now I need at least 10 lakh rupees to start my firm. How do I get to the 10 lakh? Okay, maybe if I work 3 jobs at once, I can save this much money. Maybe I don't go out for like 2-3 months. Do not spend money here, money there. Now I have 10 lakh rupees on the table. Okay, now I have money in my bank. How do I start my thing? Okay, now I need to look at renting offices. Now I need to look at portfolios to hire people. There are a lot of things that go within, like, to start a business. So, but you would eventually get there if that is your aim, right? And I always knew that was my aim, not because I was unhappy with the job, but I just feel that I work way better in a free environment. I mean, my whole life journey has been, I've been talking about that. I just like a place where I can think freely, where I can take up an architecture project and the next day I can take up a graphic designing project and the next day I can take a product. Like, to me, it's about designing. It's not about, oh, I'm going to make houses. That is not how I function, but that can be how you function, right? And it's completely okay. So you have to find the reasons for why you want to shift, right? And that is the main issue as well in India right now. If the main reason for you to shift from architecture to UI UX is because UI UX is paying a lot, then you are doing something wrong. Because then you can ask yourself questions: why not a banking job? Why
Yeah.
not a teacher? Why not a social media influencer? Why are these things outside the box if money is the only option? Is money is the only target? And there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with money being the only target. But if that is the target, then why are you not going there? Why are you going to UI UX? You know?
Yeah.
So that should be the question that you should be asking. Why am I shifting? How am I shifting? How am I going to reach there? And if you ask just two, three questions, you formulate like a list of things that you need to do for it. So I think if you're a young designer and really want to shift, then ask yourself why you want to shift. What will
Mhm.
you require to do a shift? So
Okay.
you also have to look at it in terms of privileges. Like, is your family doing okay? Do you have family burdens? Do you have family responsibilities? All those things, because no two journeys can ever be similar. If you have
Yeah.
somebody who's if your maybe your parents are running a firm, then you can join a firm at 20 to 23 as well, straight out of college.
True.
If you
Yeah.
don't have that, and if you don't, if your parents are somebody who needs support, then you would have to work at a job and give some money in the house as well. It depends on where you are, so it's not
Yeah.
as white or black. So I would say that ask yourself question: why do you want to shift? Why do you want to do a firm? Have you ever talked to somebody who has run a firm before? What are the
Mhm.
problems I would face? And by the time you're doing a job and learning all the things of the job, because that's what I did. So my
Yeah.
plan was learning all the things at the job. And I think something. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. You're back. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I would say that while you're doing at a job, I used to keep a diary and keep questions with it. I mean, I still always have a diary right next by me and I keep writing stuff. So
That's
it's
cool.
always there with me.
Yeah.
But always keep writing things to keep your head clean. Okay. Because every day I used to learn something new.
Yeah. Yeah.
At some point, I was like, oh, I need an HR. How do I deal with HR things? I've never really sent a mail to person to hire somebody. How do you send that? How do I do clients? Or like, how do I, because I have to review student portfolios as well. All those things you would have to learn, but you would learn that on the journey. Everybody would make mistakes.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that, but keep that clean. Why do you want to shift here?
Okay. I think that is a much better answer than you will know when you know. I
Yeah.
think that maybe sort of lays it out for you a little bit. Cool. So I also want to talk about the works that you have done as part of your studio. So can you like tell us about one project that is maybe the most meaningful to you or might be the most challenging? Just a little bit about its story.
Um, I don't know. I think I think the most challenging one would be the first one. But it's definitely not the biggest one, but it's probably the one that taught me the most in that sense. And the reason was because the same thing, right? So I designed this store called Mystery Store in GK1. But that was one of my initial projects like 3 years ago. But at the time, I was working with the firm otherwise as well. So the same thing. Now I have a project and I have to work on this project, but I also have to work at the firm that I'm working at, right? And I cannot leave my job because
Yeah.
if I leave my job, I don't know if the second project is coming in. Like
Yeah.
it's a
The
very
gamble.
big dilemma to live in, right?
Yeah.
So I made a timetable, right? So I used to go like at 9 a.m. I would leave. I got a job literally right close to my house. So I don't have to travel a lot. I don't have to spend a lot of time traveling and I can save as much time as possible. Come back at home at like 6:30, 7, and then, rest for a while, start again at 8 and work till like 10, 11, 12 or something, right? So I can give
Yeah.
4 hours every day and Saturday, Sundays I can also give. So during that time, I would work on my other project, which was the designing project. And it was just a 500 square feet interior store, right? It was not a big project, but I also took it up as a construction project because it was that small, there was no
Okay.
contractor in, right? Because there was no
Okay.
civil engineer, they couldn't hire civil engineers, we couldn't hire anybody. But I was like, okay, this is the best time for me to learn on site as well. So
Yeah.
every mistake I make on site, I would learn about it.
Yeah.
So, and I would procure this. So I would go at 7 p.m. after my work and be like, get all the contractors on site. Where's the plywood coming from? Where's the veneer coming from? Where's the tile coming from? Call the tile person, call this person, call the AC person. And to manage all that, I understood a lot about managing, which
Yeah.
is very important to run a firm, I would say, more than the architecture part of it. I think you can always outsource architecture, but you can never outsource management because
Yeah.
it's your firm, right? At the end of the day, if you hire an employee, you cannot expect them to put in the same efforts for your firm that you can. It's unfair. It's quite literally unfair. So they will do the job that is necessary and they will go home because that's why they are at a job. They want a simple life. They don't want to put that much effort into your firm because they are also not gaining the profits out of that firm directly, right? It's you. So you need to learn everything about management more than architecture because the architecture details, you can always hire people for it, drafts person, there is 3D renderer person you can hire. So
Yeah.
that's
Definitely.
always, I would say it's a weird thing to say, but I would always say that's the secondary part because I think you can still outsource it. Management is something you cannot outsource because how
Yeah.
can you? That person is if that person is not in the office, how would they know that the printer is not working? Right? And you cannot call them and let them know that the printer is not working. So I need a person to solve the printer thing.
Yeah.
And now if the printer thing needs to be solved, you need to know a person who repairs printers. So it's like it's a weird thing to say, but like you need to know everything about right from the printing to the what is happening on site.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I would say that was the project that I learned a lot from.
Okay. Cool. So apart from those projects, you've also done some conceptual work like the B project. And I would like you to explain a little bit about what those projects are. What is a conceptual work, and just walk us through that a little bit.
Hmm. Um, uh, I have done a fair share of conceptual projects everywhere, but I think uh, an issue that I feel with people calling a conceptual project is that oftentimes we think that conceptual projects can never be realized, and that's why they are conceptual, which is not true. That shouldn't be true at all. I have taken a lot of elements from my architecture portfolio from college that was trash. That was completely been like, okay, this is not gonna work. This is never gonna work. This is a terrible project. And I've picked up elements from those projects and put in real life actual finished projects, and they have worked
Okay.
completely fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this idea that it's a conceptual project and a portfolio is meant for a portfolio is quite is where we lack as designers, I think. Because there's so much. Can you imagine like there are 10 semesters in architecture. So everybody has 10 projects. Every student, there are at least every year 5 lakh students or something in architecture. That's 50 lakhs projects every year being wasted. Completely wasted. Imagine if that power is just put up in like transforming your roads and urban design in architecture or in India or something. Everything would be designed. Like every single washroom, every single bus stop, every single thing would be 50 lakh projects are going to waste. Right. So it's I think we should start looking at our own things from conceptual and start inculcating them into the real thing. So
Questions.
I
Yeah.
think I'll give you an example. The B project, for example, it's a project that I've been doing at RCA. It's about um, you know in India, it's not as big of a concept, but here people really care about insects and biodiversity, and climate is a real issue here. I mean, in India, the temperatures are rising so much, right? It's a never-ending conversation, but to conserve the bee population and increase growth, I started working on this project where I have taken inspirations from Islamic architecture in India. So because I'm from Delhi, I used to visit for architectural visit. I used to visit Humayun Tomb,
Yeah. Yeah.
Red Fort. It was like a normal visit. Even during my coaching times, they used to take us to these visits, right?
Yeah.
And I would visit all these things and think, and somewhere in my mindset, they would leave an impression, right? And I was quite because again, I was interested in arts a lot. I was like, how did they create this world? How do they have like star patterns and these crazy geometries, and somehow they just
Yeah.
interlock like Tetris, right? It just fits perfectly. And then you look at the larger picture, it's a dome. But then you're like, there's so many smaller elements that they had to design
Yeah.
to fit like a puzzle, right? And that I felt could be something that could be introduced in like bee houses, right? Because bee also are very geometrical. They have hexagons connecting with each other and stuff like that. So I started working on that idea of how I can take inspiration from Islamic architecture and use it in bee housing. So I've created these prototypes out of different shapes and permutations and combinations of those Islamic motifs to create houses. So it's a small concept right now, and we can go late someday later. We can go deeper into it because the research goes deeper into it. But it's just an idea that that is what I'm talking about. Like nobody here would think about it because it's too niche. People in London or UK cannot combat that as an issue because they don't have Islamic architecture here. The same like we do in India, right?
Yeah.
So they have had a different life experience. So they would not tackle the same issue the same way. Whereas me, coming from that idea, if I think about it as a conceptual thing that, oh, one day I went to Red Fort, doesn't really make a difference. But I am not thinking about it as a conceptual thing. I am taking that as a thing that I can use in actual practical ways, right? And implementing that later on. So you can always look at conceptual projects for that. Even if that project doesn't really work out as a building, as an architecture piece in real life, it is not built. There are several elements of it that can be used in the other projects that you're working on. And you should always look at conceptual projects like that.
Yeah, I think that's a interesting take on this whole theory of things. So you've mentioned that all of these projects you take inspiration from, these are recognized also, like you've received global recognition for some of your conceptual works. So how do you think these competitions or these awards play a role in your creative growth and your professional growth, if they play a role at all? So also, like, I also wanna like question you that should a person do this out of an ulterior motive that maybe I'll get a head start in some direction, or is it solely for like a passion inside you?
Hmm. It's an interesting question, but what I would say is that it's it is what it is sort of answer, right? Because we live in a world where we've always lived in a world, if you're not seen, your work will never be recognized, right? I personally feel that there is no point of being recognized after you've like passed away and like hundreds of years later and people call you underrated. There is nothing nice in being underrated. Actually, you should always strive to be overrated. People always give overrated as a disrespectful thing to say to somebody, but actually if I am doing work, I would much rather be overrated than underrated. No, I would much rather be paid higher for my work than lower for my work, right? So I would much rather be overrated. So if somebody says that, oh, your work is overrated, I am actually happy because I am doing my branding perfectly, that my work, if I'm doing 10 rupees of work, I'm getting 12 rupees for it, right? Whereas if you're doing 10 rupees of work and getting only 4 rupees for it, then that's completely wrong. That shouldn't how things should be. But the point is that that is how the world is working right now. What is seen is what is sold. And if you look at other examples, even like Van Gogh, people keep talking about it. Like now we have exhibitions, and Van Gogh had a big thing in Delhi as well. We had the immersive experience and stuff like that. What's the point? He died in debt, right? Nobody cared when he was alive. He painted his whole life, had to literally borrow money, sell his paintings, burn his paintings down to keep himself warm. Like that's not the life that he should have led, right? But he had that life. And now you in hindsight, you're saying that, oh, he had such good artwork.
And you're making a lot of money out of it from.
Yeah, now people are making money out of it. And what's the point? You didn't make a living out of it so I would always say that there is nothing wrong in it. But I personally would say that the main taking of participating in any competition in any sort of place is how many people you talk to and how many conversations it opens. And you should always be open for that, no matter how big, how small you are. My biggest thing would be like if I see somebody who's just joined architecture, who's just like 18, 19, just joined architecture or is not from architecture, I would always ask them to critique my work. I would actually never ask any established architect to critique my work because they will point out the most irrelevant things in a project. They will say that, oh, this joinery is not working. It's bogus. This joinery is not working. This detail is not working. This handrail could have been done in this way. I am not looking at spaces like that. Tell me how you feel in a space, right? Which a person who has nothing to do with architecture would tell you. They would be like, you know what? Meko maza nahi aa raha hai space. And they will say that because they can't understand architecture, right? They will just be like, yeah, I feel this space is very dingy. they would not know ki, oh, the light is not coming through
Why?
properly, it's
Yeah.
not cold, it's not warm. They would not know the words, but they will describe the emotion perfectly. They will say that, oh, I'm feeling scared in this place. I'm feeling joyful in this place. I feel like walking in this place. They would not know the elements, but they will tell you the emotions, which is way more important for architecture. And so when you
Yeah.
go to competitions like these, a lot of times people just show up. So there are people
Yeah.
from different categories, different things. There are photographers, and they would tell you a lot about your work than most of the people around you,
Yeah.
because they are not thinking about it in a practical way. Whereas if you show your work to any architect, any interior designer, they would think of it as a practical way that, oh, you know what, this detail wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It's too small for what the whole project is. I mean, sure, that retail might not work, but in the totality of things, I'm looking at more at how the space is working. And I think people who are inexperienced would tell you more about that space than people who are experienced. It's a weird conflict, but that's what I feel personally.
Yeah, I think the field in general is like so confined. Architects critiquing architects, showcasing each other their work, and just close the book, leave it closed. You have to like expose the general public to it. That only then you'll get the recognition that we keep talking about. Nobody knows. Nobody is paying us. This profession is dying. Why is it dying? Because nobody knows about it. The relevance of architecture as a skill or something that you have to have in a space that needs to be well designed.
And even as a business, I would say that even architecture as a business has never been, it's somehow, that's what, it's so gate kept in as an industry that
Yeah.
nowhere in the world this happens, right? But in architecture, a person who's making money is looked down upon, right?
Yeah.
Which is the craziest thing that you can ever think about it in a capitalistic world, right? Making money would mean that you can pay your employees more. Making money would mean that you can build like projects for free. You can do pro bono work. Making money would mean that, you can let go of this fees for this project. So many things can happen if you make
Yeah.
a substantial amount of money. But that is something
Yeah.
that is always looked down upon. And I think every young designer that comes into my firm, I always teach them that there is nothing wrong in being there. You are not doing something illegal. If you're paying your taxes well, if you're doing things correctly, then there's nothing wrong in making money. And actually, money is quite liberating. You can help a lot of people with it. So, and also as a business, like the best way to pitch a project is by telling that, you know what, if you hire me and not, let's say, XYZ architect, I would make the space in a way that it gives you XYZ profit. So
Yeah.
whenever I pitch a retail project, I tell them that, you know what, do not look at the space that I've built because you clearly do not understand the architecture of it. You're just a
Yeah.
businessman. So I'm not expecting you to understand the architecture. Go to the previous owner, talk to him of how much the business revenue increased after we designed the space. Right.
Yeah.
So if
Makes
I
sense.
designed the space for, let's say, 20 lakhs, but the business revenue increased by 50 lakhs or a 1 crore, right?
Yeah.
That means that 20 lakh of investment increased the revenue by 5x. And that should be also an aim when you're talking about retail projects, offices, hospitality. Then your value is added. Then people would also pay you higher because then people would say that, you know what, if I spend 20 lakhs on this architect, my overall revenue increases.
Yeah.
And then you would be valued more as an architect. So
Definitely.
it's something that people should talk more about, I feel.
Yeah. So speaking of like the community architecture in general, coming to a bit more optimistic side of things, what I don't know, could be pessimistic also, like that's up to you. I wanna ask your perception about the future of architecture and design. What do you think is things going up, things going down, AI, all of that, like the obvious debate that is happening? What is your take?
I don't know, man. I'm tired of those takes. But I mean, as long as AI is concerned, I don't think that it does anything to architecture per se. It's because thankfully it doesn't, because a lot of architecture is about building, right? So
Yeah.
it's something that's tangible, and that's the whole point. Like you can have AI and you can even have robots, but it still would, like, if you look at 3D printing, right? People said that 3D printing would be a big thing. I don't know if you've ever 3D printed anything, but because I'm in product design here, I 3D print a lot here. It
Yeah.
takes forever to build something this small. Like, itna sa agar banana hai na, to it will take 30 hours to make something like this. It will continuously print for 30 hours, right? So imagine yes, 30 hours. So if you're building something quite big, it will take you days worth of energy and work. So, and it will still not have the same finish that a human hand would have, even to this day. So, and it will never have that because it's just the technique that works. It's melting plastic to make something. Whereas when you make it, you're making it by carving things, right? You're deducting things. It's not an additive process. There, it's an additive process. So adhesive gets added, and that adhesive causes it to like not be as finished, right? So machinery can always help you, and tools can always help you, especially in architecture, but can never be the end product because you still require labor work. You still require the joinery that is being made. So it can tell you how the visual would look, but can never give you the detail of what is happening behind. Like if I need insulation, AI cannot tell me that you require this thing. I mean, if you search about it, it will tell you.
Yeah.
But if you ask Midjourney to make an image, it will not tell you that this is because there's so many factors.
Yeah.
The permutation combinations in architecture is so high that a computer cannot take care of all the permutation combinations. That the calculation would be so big, like it would be literally in millions of permutations of combinations because climate is involved. If it's north facing, east facing, northeast facing, what part of the world it is in? Is it in Delhi? Is it in South India? Is it in London? It changes completely how you do architecture.
Yeah.
And what color would you use? What details would you use? Can you use veneer? If there's moisture in the air, you cannot use veneer. Do you use MDF? It's like too many things that architecture has that you as an architect only can solve. So even if it helps somebody, it will be architects. It will not be in other fields. I'm not sure. Of course, in other fields, it can be automated quite well. So if you look at call centers, if you look at things that require you to do just a specific task and doesn't have a lot of permutation combinations involved, like if you ask an AI to make an apple, now an apple is an apple. It's an objective thing.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of ways you can make an apple. So of course it will make an apple better than what a human can draw an apple because it's just drawing an apple, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as the permutation, but if you ask him, you know what, now carve me your apple into this wood block, then it will start having problems because now it has to calculate what the wood is, what is the density, what is the volume, how is the grain going, how do I polish it? Then it will start having problems.
Yeah.
So any field that has a lot of like things to calculate, variables that can go out of hand would be quite okay with AI. The things that are quite simple would have challenging tackling AI or computers.
Okay, cool. That's like a what would you say, balanced enough perspective to have regarding this. So I would like to then move things to a concluding segment and ask you about any advice or tips, tricks, or do's, don'ts, precautions, whatever you want to call it, for young architects or architecture students about maybe whatever you have learned from your experiences so far. Just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say I think the similar points that I've said quite before as well, but maybe in a way I would say that think outside the confined environment that you're in. And I mean, there'll always be times to learn that, it's not, you're not, I'm sorry to say it, but you're not different if you know about Louis Barragan, if you know about Lee Corbusier, if you know about Scarjo Shijuma, you know about Kengo Kuma. All architects know about it. It's not something new. And if great architecture was so easy to learn by greats, right, then everybody would be that, right? In your college, in SP Delhi and in CEPT University or any other college, there are many other good, SPA Vijayawada is there, SP Bhopal is there. There are multiple good colleges for architecture. Everybody teaches somewhat similar people. Everybody knows about B.V. Doshi. Everybody knows about Raj Reval. Everybody knows about Lee. Sabne padha hai. Then why is it that we don't have another Lee Corbusier? We don't have another B.V. Doshi, right?
Yeah.
Because they weren't doing something that has already been done the same way.
Yeah.
So that is why I say people always look at inspirations from outside the field. Do not confine yourself into an architectural box that to learn architecture, you need to be an architect and you need to learn from architects. Not true. You can learn from people around you. You can learn just go and watch your parents or your mom. How does she use a kitchen space? You'll realize all the theory that has been taught to you. You'll realize all the triangles that you were made. Oh, fridge needs to be here, the pan needs to be here, the sink needs to be here. You can always learn that in books as soon as you start cooking yourself. Like, learn how to cook. You'll understand how a kitchen works and you'll understand why a kitchen is made the way it is. Right?
Yeah.
Once you understand that as a fundamental of person using the space, then you can break from the chain. Then you can have, oh, you know what? We can have modular kitchens. Oh, you know what? You can have open kitchens and have a dining space in them. Like, somebody changed that, right? Early on, it used to be a kitchen is a different room, it's somewhere else, and a dining space is somewhere else. Somebody came up with this concept that, you know what? Why don't we bridge the space between a kitchen and a dining table and create this open floor plan and have an open kitchen? Somebody thought about it because that is how they were using the kitchen. Whereas in an Indian context, it doesn't work because you have too much gravy, you have too much masala. And because of that, the smell would be so high that all your drawing room would be filled with that masala smell.
Yeah.
But in the West, you don't have that issue because you don't have that much spices. You use salt and pepper, and you use just meat to make the dish. So you don't have that much smell in living into this. So you can have a an open kitchen. So that just comes out of how you're using the space. Nobody has taught them anything. No architect has intervened. No design person has intervened. It's just you using the space. Right?
Yeah.
Similarly, be more aware of the things you're doing. There is nothing wrong in being a bad architect, but you can be a very well designer still, very, very good designer still.
Yeah.
People who say, oh, तेरे को ये detail भी नहीं बनानी आती, brick की thickness कितनी होती है. You always, if you go to like a fifth year student, and they are trying to ask question to a first year, they will always ask these stupid questions. What is the dimension of a brick? That doesn't solve an issue. It just creates something that you've been taught again and again. Oh, why is brick this? Can we make, now there are people who are making bricks of different sizes as well. They're making different jalis as well. Why? Because they questioned it. Start questioning things. Go to people from other fields, like every design college, if you're maybe not in CEPT and SFA Delhi, but in other design colleges that are teaching you, maybe in Pearl or Shrishti and other colleges like that, other private colleges, they have multiple design fields. They have fashion, textiles, UI, UX, graphic designers. Ask them the questions. Instead of showing your drawings to an architect, show them to these people. And they will give you good inputs. Or maybe sometimes bogus things as well, but they will give you quite interesting perspectives. They'll be like, you know what, maybe this window should be on the skylight so I can see the sky. Which an architect would never give you, because I'll be like, how would it work? So maybe try that, I would say.
Okay, awesome. I think a lot to think about there. So I would just like to conclude this conversation, and I would like to thank you for sharing, I think, a lot of important information. I was like, a lot of my perceptions were questioned during this conversation. So thank you so much for doing this. Hope you also had a good time talking about these things. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm always open for questions and things. I mean, as designers, I think it's part of our life to question things around us. And I personally learn a lot, so I always encourage people to do it because it's quite the opposite of what you would learn in an architecture college. And I think, and even when there's a huge difference when I meet the same people. Like how I'm talking about this, people would often think that I hate my college or I don't have respect for the people that have taught me this. That's absolutely not true. In London itself, we keep alumni meets for CEPT, which is the best thing about CEPT. Shout out to CEPT. They have alumni meets all over the world, all over the globe.
Yeah.
We've had 4 London meetings since I've been here. Every 2 months, we have a meeting here. And we just talk about design and things in the world. And it's outside the college campus. And so it's free of that burden of a drawing or an architectural center line plan. Stop having conversations in general and not thinking about creating something.
Yeah.
Maybe it helps. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.